What really happens when family lines get too close, not just once, but again and again for generations? What does it look like when cousins don't just marry once out of convenience, but make it a tradition? When siblings grow up so isolated that the only people they know well enough to love are each other? And what happens when a child comes into this world carrying a secret so raw that even her own face can't hide it? A child born from a mother who was once her father's daughter. You might think stories like these belong in old history books or ancient royal scandals, the stuff of kings and queens who kept their bloodlines pure at any cost. But these aren't dusty myths from Europe's dark past. These are real lives, real bodies, real families hidden in plain sight here in America. Right now, in parts of West Virginia's mountains, the back roads of Texas, tight-knit religious communities in the Dakotas, and even suburban homes in places like Houston, there are women living out the cost of bloodlines that looped in on themselves when no one was watching. Over the next few minutes, you're going to hear the true stories of 5 American women. Some alive today, some who died forgotten. Women whose entire lives were shaped and sometimes shattered by the secrets their families thought they could keep locked away forever. One of Gracie's daughters, Lorine Whitaker, was born right into this spiraling storm of bloodlines that never branched out. She came into the world in the 1940s, delivered in the same drafty Appalachian house where her mother had been born before her, in a family that kept its secrets tucked behind mountains and whispered porches. Her parents were double cousins close enough genetically to be siblings, and for Lorine there was nowhere else for the DNA to go but in circles. From the start, the signs were there. Lorine's eyes never focused the way other babies did. Her tiny hands stayed limp. Her legs refused to hold her up when other toddlers were already running barefoot through the hollows. Words never came. She never said Mama never called out for help, never asked why her world stayed so small. Neighbors in the holler noticed. They'd see her on the porch rocking back and forth with a blank stare while other kids played in the creek. They called her simple in low voices, an easy word for something they didn't want to name. But behind that word was a darker truth. Lorine was living proof that the family's closed circle had finally hit nature's wall. When the rare nurse or county worker came by, they'd find no official diagnosis, no medical help, no records, just Lorine drifting through the same rooms year after year. She never went to school. She never worked a day in her life. She never left that patch of Appalachian land where the same blood kept folding in on itself. When she died, likely in her 40s or 50s, there was no obituary in the local paper. No funeral announcement. Just silence. The same silence that had always followed her name. Rita's story is not a distant Appalachian rumor or a forgotten name in a small-town graveyard. She was born in Texas around 2010, not in a hospital at first, but in a dark, stifling back room that smelled of damp carpet and secrets no one dared name. Her mother was barely 16. Her father was more than twice her age, and also her grandfather. Rita came into this world fighting for breath she didn't ask to take. She weighed barely 5 pounds, her heartbeat fluttered in and out like a bad signal, her tiny face seemed slightly wrong in ways the delivery nurse couldn't quite explain. At first, doctors blamed it on bad luck, maybe poor prenatal care. But the bruises that kept showing up on her fragile skin couldn't be brushed away. One blood test turned into 2, then a full genetic workup. The truth knocked the wind out of the county clinic. The DNA matched 2 perfectly regions that should never match between 2 parents did. Father and daughter, grandfather and granddaughter, 1 man, 2 roles, 1 life stolen twice. By the time Rita was 4, she'd already had heart surgery, a shunt to drain the fluid choking her brain, and daily sessions to teach her how to move her legs, but words never came. Her mother tried to say it was love, but the state of Texas called it what it really was, abuse woven into her bones. Both parents were sentenced and locked away. Now Rita lives behind another locked door, a long-term care home in Houston. She is 14, but her mind drifts far younger. She has no words for what she lost, only the silence that her broken body carries for her. She is living proof that incest isn't just a crime, sometimes it becomes a life sentence. One of Gracie Whitaker's many children, Lorine, was born straight into the eye of the family's genetic storm, a storm that had been brewing long before she ever took her first breath. It was sometime in the 1940s, deep in the Appalachian mountains, in the same drafty clapboard house where her mother Gracie had been born before her. Her parents were double cousins, so closely bound by blood that their child's DNA was trapped in a loop with nowhere else to go. From her first days, the signs were there if anyone had wanted to see them. Lorine didn't cry the way other babies did. Her eyes drifted off, never quite focusing on her mother's face. Her tiny hands flopped at her sides when other toddlers were already grasping, pointing, trying out words. For Lorine, words never came. Not mama, not why, not anything at all. Neighbors whispered when they thought no one was listening. They called her slow or simple, an easy word to bury what they really feared. The truth was that Lorine's silence wasn't just chance. It was the price the family paid for keeping its bloodline locked behind mountain roads and shut doors. Sometimes a traveling nurse or a county worker would show up poking around the backwoods holler, taking notes on a clipboard that never made a difference. There was no diagnosis, no therapy, no help. Just the same cold mountain house, the same quiet girl sitting on the porch, rocking gently while the world passed by. Lorine never went to school. She never worked, never learned to sign her name. She never traveled farther than the edge of the family's property line. When she died, most likely in her mid-40s or 50s, there was no obituary, no gravestone worth visiting. Just the same silence that had cradled her when she was born. A life written in whispers and closed doors and never spoken of again. Rita's story didn't begin in a bright delivery room or with a baby shower or proud grandparents waiting outside. Rita was born in Texas around 2010. But her life started in a locked back bedroom of a weathered house on the edge of a town that didn't want to look too closely. Her mother was barely 16, still a child herself. Her father was more than just the man who got her pregnant, he was also her father. Rita's grandfather and her father were the same man. From her first breath, Rita struggled. She came early so small that her skin looked paper thin under the harsh hospital lights. Nurses noticed the way her tiny chest rattled when she tried to cry. Her heartbeat skipped and stuttered. Her little face seemed off, a hint of something broken deep in her DNA that no one could quite name at first. But the bruises were harder to ignore. Small, dark fingerprints where no baby should have bruises. Routine tests turned into questions that turned into hushed calls to social workers. One blood test revealed what no one wanted to see in black and white. Her father was her mother's father. The same man, the same blood twice over. By the time Rita turned 4, her young body had already been through more surgeries than some people face in a lifetime: heart surgery, to patch a defect, a shunt to drain fluid choking her brain, endless physical therapy just to keep her muscles working. But she never spoke. Not a single word. The courts called it abuse. The mother tried to call it love. It didn't matter. Both went to prison. And Rita, the living evidence, was placed in a locked care home in Houston. She's a teenager now, but her mind remains a child's. She doesn't talk. She doesn't tell her story. She simply is the story proof that when incest isn't stopped, it doesn't just ruin families. It rewrites a child's life forever. Not every story that begins with bloodlines looping back on themselves ends in pure tragedy. Maria's life proves that sometimes, even when nature stacks the deck, people can find a way through. She was born in the mid-1970s, inside a remote Hutterite colony tucked away in South Dakota's vast farmland, a place where faith and tradition mattered more than what outsiders thought. For generations, families in the colony married within the group, often to cousins. It wasn't scandal. It was survival and continuity. Maria's parents were second cousins, close enough for the odds to tilt against her at birth. When she came into the world, it was clear something wasn't right. Her chin looked too small, her ears were oddly shaped, and a cleft split her tiny palate. Doctors hundreds of miles away would later call it Treacher-Collins syndrome, a rare condition that affects the development of bones and tissue in the face. Unlike so many born into tangled bloodlines, Maria's mind was spared. Her hearing suffered, but her brain stayed bright. She learned to read lips and sign before she could fully speak. In a world where some families bury their secrets, Maria's community didn't hide her away. Instead, they pulled her closer, protecting her with faith and tight bonds. They gave her surgeries when they could. They gave her belonging when the outside world might have given her pity. When medical researchers wrote about Maria's case, they used it as a reminder that even second-cousin marriage repeated long enough can surface hidden genetic risks. But Maria refused to be defined by the odds. Now in her 50s, Maria still lives in that same colony. She married a distant cousin from another branch safely outside the tightest gene pool. She has 2 healthy kids who run through the same fields she once crossed in secret. Her face carries the history of her ancestry, but her life proves that sometimes faith and care can bend the rules that DNA tries to write. Linda's story pulls this hidden truth back into the present, not in a remote mountain town or a locked farmhouse, but in the middle of Houston, Texas, where life moves fast and secrets are supposed to be harder to keep. She was born in 2011 to a married couple who were first cousins, a pairing that would raise eyebrows in most American neighborhoods, but made perfect sense in the place they came from. Her parents were recent immigrants from the Middle East, where cousin marriage is woven into family tradition and trusted to keep bloodlines strong and wealth within the clan. But the genes didn't care about culture. When Linda was born, she arrived a few weeks too soon, her tiny muscles limp, her cries weaker than they should have been. Feeding was a struggle. She'd fall asleep mid-bottle, her body exhausted by a battle no one around her knew was already being lost inside her DNA. It took months before the full truth showed itself. By her first birthday, Linda's head was too small for her age, microcephaly. By kindergarten, the seizures started, the missing kidney was discovered, and words came slowly, then stalled. A genetic test confirmed what doctors suspected. Her parents shared so much identical DNA that Linda had inherited double the risk for rare recessive conditions. Her parents sat in the hospital cafeteria, stunned. Back home, no one had warned them that love within the family could turn against the next generation. They called it tradition. The medical charts called it risk. Today, Linda is 14. She lives at home, surrounded by family who love her fiercely, but can't undo the damage already written into her bones. She attends special classes, struggles with reading simple words, and needs therapy every week just to hold on to the skills other kids take for granted. She is not hidden away. She is right here, living proof that when tradition and biology collide, it's always the child who carries the heaviest burden. These stories aren't myths whispered around a campfire or half-remembered rumors from distant centuries. They are real. They are American. And they are proof that what stays hidden behind locked doors, behind family pride, behind whispered prayers for silence, always finds a way to surface. Sometimes that hidden cost wears a twisted spine or a misshapen face. Sometimes it sits quietly at the back of a special education classroom, struggling to hold a pencil steady. Sometimes it rocks alone on a porch, deep in the Appalachian woods, never learning a single word to say why. So whose responsibility is it to break this cycle? Who steps in when tradition collides head-on with biology? Is it the government's job to knock on doors in faraway hollers and hidden rooms? Is it the doctor's job to ask the uncomfortable questions when a baby's blood work comes back with answers no one wants to hear? Or is it up to families themselves to stand up against what's always been done when always is killing their children before they even have a chance to speak? In America, we like to believe these stories happen somewhere else, to some other people in some forgotten place. But they're here. They're in the mountains. They're in Houston. They're in communities that cling to silence because silence feels safer than shame. But silence doesn't protect children. Silence is what lets the cycle spin another generation forward. So maybe the real question isn't about who to blame, but who has the courage to break the loop. Because when families close their ranks too tight, when bloodlines circle back on themselves unchecked, the price never stays hidden forever. It shows up in bodies that can't grow straight, in voices that never come in lives, that never got to choose what they were born into and can never get free from what they inherited. Somewhere tonight in a quiet room behind locked doors in Houston, Rita is still lying in her hospital bed. She will never speak the truth that her small, fragile body has carried from the moment she took her first breath in that hidden back room. Her story is still unfolding, and so is this hidden American truth that we keep pretending lives only in other people's families and other people's towns. Lorine's rocking chair on that lonely Appalachian porch is empty now, but her silence still echoes in the jeans she left behind. Linda's small hands grip her pencil in a special classroom where every word is a battle her brain has to fight to win. And Maria, standing in her Hutterite colony, shows that sometimes survival does find a crack in the wall, but only when a community chooses care over shame. These women, these daughters, sisters, granddaughters, did not choose the bloodlines that shaped them. They didn't ask to carry the price of secrets kept too close for too long. But they remind us that what we choose to ignore doesn't disappear. It grows. It loops back. It waits. Maybe we can't rewrite what's already buried in old graveyards and sealed medical files, but maybe we can break the silence that protects it. Maybe we can speak where generations chose to hush. Because if we don't, another Rita will be born tonight, and another silence will grow where a voice should have been.